ran through the crystal gardens of the Terran embassy. His small feet made soft sounds on the glowing pathways. The 8-year-old boy loved these gardens more than anywhere else in the universe. Here, the plants sparkled like jewels and the air tasted like sweet honey. He called out, "Where are you hiding?" A soft giggle came from behind a tree made of pure blue crystal. The tree's branches held flowers that glowed with their own light, smiled and ran toward the sound. "Found you," he said as a figure stepped out from behind the tree. Was not human. She was one of the beings who lived on this world called. Her skin was pale and seemed to glow from inside. Her hair moved like it was underwater, even though there was no wind. Wings like a butterfly's grew from her back, but these wings were made of light itself. Her eyes looked like captured starlight. "You always find me too fast," said. Her voice sounded like music. "How do you do it?" Shrugged, "I just know where you are. It's like my heart can see you." The two children had been best friends for 3 years. Parents worked at the embassy. They helped humans and talked to each other and make deals. Had met on his first day on. She had been shy at first. Most did not talk to human children, but had shared his chocolate with her, and they had been friends ever since. They played together every day, taught human games like hide and seek, showed how to see the patterns in the crystal trees. She taught him words in her language that sounded like singing. "Let's sit by the fountain," said. They walked to the center of the garden. A fountain made of white crystal shot water high into the air. The water sparkled and made rainbow colors in the sunlight. They sat on the edge and dangled their feet in the warm water. Said, she sounded sad, "I need to tell you something." Looked at his friend. Her light seemed dimmer than usual. "What's wrong?" "The council met yesterday," she said. "They made a decision about humans." Felt cold even though the sun was warm. The council was the group of old who made all the important choices for their people. What kind of decision? "They don't want to be friends with humans anymore," said. Tears began to fall down her face. These tears looked like liquid diamonds. "There was a fight about money and trade. The council says humans cannot be trusted." "But that's not true," said. "We're friends, we trust each other." "I know," whispered, "but the council doesn't care. They're going to put up barriers around our whole world. No humans will be allowed here ever again." Felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. "What about you? What about us?" Tears fell faster. "They're going to make me do the severance. It's a special ritual. It will make me forget all about humans. I won't remember you or our games or our friendship. It's like they're going to take away part of my soul." "No," jumped up, water splashed everywhere. "They can't do that, it's not fair." "They say it will protect me. They say caring about humans will only bring pain." Stood up too. Her wings fluttered with worry. "The ceremony is tomorrow. After that I won't be me anymore." Grabbed her hands. They felt warm and tingly like touching starlight. "I won't let them do this to you." "There's nothing you can do," said. "I'm sorry, I wish things were different." They stood there holding hands by the fountain. His mind raced. There had to be something he could do. Humans never gave up when someone they cared about was in trouble. His father had told him that many times. Said, his voice was serious like when grown-ups made important promises. "I want to tell you something." She looked at him with her starlight eyes. "I'm going to marry you when I grow up," said. Gasped, "That's impossible. We're different species. I'll forget you tomorrow, and even if I didn't, my people would never allow it." "I don't care," said. He squeezed her hands. "I'm going to find a way. I'll learn everything about your people and your world. I'll find a way to break the severance. And when I do, I'll come back for you with a ring." Laughed, but it was a sad laugh. "You're just a little boy. You don't understand how impossible that is." "Watch me," said. "Humans don't know the meaning of impossible." The next day stood with his parents as they packed to leave. All around the embassy, humans were getting ready to go. Ships waited in the sky to take them away. watched through his bedroom window as walked toward the Severance Temple with other. She moved like she was in a dream. Her light was very dim now. Just before she entered the temple, she turned and looked up at his window. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance, pressed his hand against the glass. "I'll come back for you," he whispered. "I promise." Raised her hand to her heart, then disappeared inside the temple. 3 hours later, barriers of pure energy rose around the planet. They glowed like angry fire in the sky. No human ship could pass through them. His family's ship joined the others, leaving forever. As they flew away, pressed his face against the ship's window. He watched get smaller and smaller until it was just a point of light. "I'll keep my promise," he said quietly. "No matter how long it takes, no matter how impossible it seems, I'll come back for you." His parents thought he was just a heartbroken little boy who would forget his alien friend in time. They had no idea they were watching the beginning of the greatest love story in galactic history. 15 years had passed since made his promise to. The little boy was now a man of 23. He stood in his laboratory on Earth, looking at charts and data that covered every wall. Books about culture filled tall shelves. Computer screens showed star maps and chemical formulas. Doctor had become the galaxy's leading expert on biology. He knew more about their species than most knew about themselves. Every day for 15 years, he had studied their language, their customs, and their science. He had never forgotten the girl with starlight eyes. "You need to sleep," said Dr. Sarah, his research partner. She stood in the doorway of his lab holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've been working for 36 hours straight." Rubbed his tired eyes. "I'm close to something, Sarah. I can feel it." Sarah walked over and set a coffee cup on his desk. She had known since college. She was one of the few people who knew about his promise to. Most people thought he was crazy for spending his life studying a species that had cut off all contact with humans. "What did you find this time?" Sarah asked. Pointed to an ancient text on his computer screen. "This is from their oldest religious books. It talks about the severance ritual. Look at this part." Sarah leaned in to read the glowing symbols, had taught her basic writing. "It says something about revering the process." "Yes," said, getting excited. "The severance can be undone, but only under very specific conditions. The person who was severed must willingly accept a bond with the one they forgot, and that bond must be made with an object of pure love." "What kind of object?" Sarah asked. Scrolled to another section of text. "An engagement ring, but not just any ring. It has to be forged from Heartstar metal." Sarah's face went pale. Heartstar metal only exists in the cores of dying stars. No one has ever successfully harvested it. The heat and radiation would kill anything that got close. "I know," said quietly, "but it's the only way to save her." For the next 6 months, worked on a plan that everyone called insane. He designed a special ship that could survive inside a dying star for a few minutes. He created new types of shields and cooling systems. He studied the patterns of stellar collapse until he could predict them perfectly. The Galactic Research Council laughed when he presented his proposal. "Doctor," said council leader, a being with blue skin and 4 arms, "what you suggest is suicide. No ship has ever entered a stellar core and returned. Even if you somehow survived, the amount of Heartstar metal you could gather would be tiny." "I only need enough for 1 ring," said calmly. "This is about that girl from your childhood, isn't it?" another council member asked. "Doctor, she doesn't even remember you exist. The severance made sure of that." Stood up straight. "That doesn't change my promise." "Be realistic," said. "Even if you got the Heartstar metal is still protected by energy barriers. No human ship can get through. You would die for nothing." "Maybe," said, "but I have to try." The council rejected his proposal. They refused to give him funding or official support. They said he was wasting his talents on an impossible dream. Didn't care. He sold his house, his car, and everything he owned. He cashed out his savings and borrowed money against his future earnings. He bought materials and equipment on the black market. In an old warehouse on the edge of Earth's capital city, he began building his ship. "I think you've lost your mind," Sarah said as she watched him weld metal plates together. "But I also think you're the most dedicated person I've ever met. If anyone can pull this off, it's you." Named his ship the Promise Keeper. It was small, built for only one person. Every part was designed to survive the impossible conditions inside a dying star. The shields could deflect radiation that would cook a planet. The cooling system could handle temperatures hotter than most suns. The hull was made from the strongest materials known to science. But even with all these protections, the ship could only survive in a stellar core for a few minutes at most. He would have to find the heart star metal quickly and get out before the star's collapse crushed his ship like a tin can. The hardest part was finding a star that was dying but hadn't collapsed yet. Studied astronomical data for months. Finally, he found one. A red giant star called 7 was in its final days. According to his calculations, it would begin collapsing in about 3 weeks. "This is your last chance to change your mind," Sarah said as prepared to launch. She had tears in her eyes. "No one will think less of you if you don't do this." "I will," said simply. "I made a promise." The Promise Keeper lifted off from Earth on a cold morning in October, set course for 7, which was 6 months away at maximum speed. During the journey, he practiced the approach maneuver thousands of times in simulation. He had to get the timing exactly right. Too early, and the heart star metal wouldn't have formed yet. Too late, and the star would collapse before he could escape. As he flew through space toward his destination, thought about, he wondered what she looked like now. Did she still have those beautiful starlight eyes? Did any part of her remember him, even after the severance? "I'm coming for you," he whispered to the stars. "I don't care how dangerous this is. I don't care if everyone thinks I'm crazy. A promise is a promise." When he reached 7, the star was enormous. It filled half the sky, its red surface boiling with activity. Solar flares reached out like angry arms. The radiation levels were already dangerous, even at a safe distance. Checked his instruments one more time. According to his calculations, the core would begin forming heart star metal in exactly 47 hours. That's when he would have to dive into the star itself. He thought about turning back. It would be easy to say he tried his best. No one would blame him for giving up. But then he remembered the last time he saw, walking toward the Severance Temple with her light growing dim. "No," he said out loud, "I won't abandon her. Humans don't break promises." Began his final preparations. In 47 hours, he would either emerge from the dying star with the metal he needed, or he would die trying. But either way, he would face his fate knowing he had never given up on the girl he loved. Stared at the dying star through his ship's window. 7 was bigger than anything he had ever seen. Its red surface bubbled and boiled like a giant pot of soup. Solar storms raged across its face, shooting fire into space. The heat was so intense that even with his shields up, sweat dripped down his face. "Computer, begin final countdown," said. "Warning," the computer replied in a calm voice. "Entering stellar core has 0% survival probability. Please reconsider this action." "Override warning," said. "Begin dive sequence." The Promise Keeper turned toward the star, took a deep breath and pushed the engines to full power. His ship shot forward like a bullet toward the heart of 7. The moment he hit the star's outer layer, alarms started screaming. The temperature outside jumped to millions of degrees. His shields flared bright white as they fought to keep the heat out. The ship shook like it was being beaten with giant hammers. "Shield power at 60% and falling," the computer warned. Gritted his teeth and kept flying deeper. The star's layers got denser and hotter the further in he went. His ship was like a tiny ant diving into a furnace. All around him, Hydrogen burned in nuclear fire that could destroy planets. Finally, after what felt like forever, he reached the core. Here, in the very center of the dying star, the pressure was so great that new types of matter were being born. Heart star metal formed only in these impossible conditions, when a star was crushing itself to death. There, shouted. Through the burning plasma, he saw it, veins of silver metal that glowed with their own inner light. This was heart star metal, the rarest substance in the universe. Activated his mining beam and began cutting chunks of the precious metal away from the star's core. Warning, core collapse beginning. Recommend immediate evacuation. The star was starting to die. Could feel the gravity changing as the core began to cave in on itself. He had maybe 30 seconds before the collapse would crush his ship. He managed to grab 3 small pieces of heart star metal before he had to run. The Promise Keeper shot out of the star's core like a rocket. Behind him, 7 began its final death throes, but wasn't fast enough. The shock wave from the collapse caught his ship and sent it tumbling through space. His shields failed completely. The hull cracked in dozens of places. Air began leaking out into the void. Fought to control his ship as it spun wildly. He managed to activate emergency systems just in time. The Promise Keeper limped away from the dying star, damaged but alive. When he checked his cargo hold, his heart sank. The heart star metal was gone. The container had cracked during the escape, and the precious metal had been sucked out into space. One down, said to himself, however many it takes to go. Over the next 2 years, attempted to dive into 6 more dying stars. Each time was more dangerous than the last. The second attempt at a star called Helios Prime nearly killed him when his cooling system failed. He barely escaped with degree burns covering half his body. The third attempt was at a binary star system where 2 suns were collapsing together. The gravitational forces were so strong they bent light itself. Managed to gather some heart star metal, but space pirates attacked his damaged ship as he tried to escape. They wanted his impossible technology for themselves. That's the human who dives into stars, the pirate captain said over the radio. His ship must be worth a fortune. Had to jettison his cargo to escape. Once again, he lost the heart star metal he had risked his life to gather. Word of the mad human began to spread across the galaxy. News services reported on his impossible attempts to dive into stellar cores. Scientists studied the wreckage of his ship after each attempt, trying to understand how he survived conditions that should have killed him instantly. Most people thought he was crazy, but some began to understand what they were witnessing. This was humanity at its most pure, a man who refused to abandon someone he loved, no matter how impossible the task seemed. Doctor, the council leader who had rejected his original proposal, watched a news report about his 4th attempt. He actually survived another stellar dive, said to his assistant. That should be impossible. The reports say he's trying to forge an engagement ring, the assistant replied. For and who doesn't remember he exists? Was quiet for a long moment. I've studied hundreds of species, he finally said, but I've never seen devotion like this. Most beings would have given up after the first failure. On Rigel Station, a trading post near the galactic core, aliens gathered around news screens to watch his 5th attempt. A group of warriors known for their strength and honor watched in silence as his ship dove into another dying star. That human has the heart of a true warrior, their leader said. He fights impossible odds for love. Even species that had never liked humans began to change their minds. A race of cat-like beings started leaving supplies at the space stations or stopped to repair his ship. The Crystal Base shared their knowledge of heat-resistant materials to help him improve his shields. Why do you help the human? A young asked her elder. Because he shows us what love truly means, the elder replied. He teaches us that some bonds are stronger than physics itself. didn't know about most of this support. He was too focused on his mission to pay attention to galactic news. After each failure, he would repair his ship and search for another dying star. His body was covered in scars from radiation burns. His hair had turned white from the stress, but his determination never wavered. On his sixth attempt, something went wrong with the star's collapse pattern. Instead of a normal implosion, the star exploded outward in a massive supernova. Found himself caught in an explosion that could destroy solar systems. For 3 days, the galaxy thought he was dead. News services ran stories about the human who died trying to keep an impossible promise. Some called him a hero, others called him a fool, but everyone agreed he had shown them something extraordinary about the human spirit. Then signal appeared on long-range sensors. His ship was badly damaged, held together mostly by emergency patches and pure willpower, but he was alive. How did he survive a supernova? Scientists wondered. Even his shield technology shouldn't have been able to protect him from that much energy. Landed on Outpost 7 to make repairs. The station commander, a gruff named Orr, refused to charge him for supplies. "Your courage honors all warriors," Orr said. "A being who fights stars themselves for love deserves our respect." It was then that learned about the growing support for his mission. Beings across the galaxy were following his story. Some saw him as proof that true love could overcome any obstacle. Others were inspired by his refusal to accept defeat. "I don't need their respect," said as he worked on his ship. "I just need enough Heart Star metal to make one ring." But privately, he was moved by the support. Knowing that others believed in his mission gave him strength to continue. Seventh attempt was on a star called Omega. This time, he had help. A group of engineers had secretly upgraded his ship's shielding system. Warriors provided him with better navigation equipment. Even some humans sent messages of support. As dove into the star's core once more, he thought about. Somewhere out there, behind the energy barriers of she lived without any memory of him. But that didn't matter. Love wasn't about being remembered. It was about keeping promises even when no one else believed they could be kept. This time, when he emerged from the dying star, had what he needed. In his cargo hold sat enough Heart Star metal to forge a ring. The metal glowed with the light of a dying star, beautiful and impossible. "Finally," whispered, holding a piece of the precious metal, "now the real work begins." Stood in his ship's workshop, carefully shaping the Heart Star metal. The precious substance glowed with inner fire as he worked. It took him 3 weeks to forge the ring, using techniques he had learned from studying ancient texts. Every curve and detail had to be perfect. This ring would either free from the severance or kill him trying. When the ring was finished, held it up to the light. It was beautiful beyond words. The metal seemed to contain the light of dying stars, swirling with colors that didn't have names. Any woman in the galaxy would treasure such a gift, but this ring was made for only one person. "Computer set course for," said. The journey took 2 months. Used the time to study everything he could about current defenses. What he found made his heart sink. They hadn't just built simple energy barriers. They had turned their entire planet into a fortress. Quantum shields surrounded like angry storm clouds. These shields didn't just keep ships out. They destroyed anything human at the molecular level. Even a single human cell would be torn apart before it could reach the planet's surface. They had made their world absolutely deadly to his species. Worse, surveillance reports showed what the planet had become. Used to be a world of beauty and art, where created music from starlight and built crystal gardens that sang in the wind. Now it was cold and gray. They had become emotionless beings who cared only for logic and safety. They had cut themselves off from all feelings, thinking this would protect them from pain. "They've lost themselves," said sadly as he read the reports. "They think that not caring is the same as being safe." When reached, he stopped his ship just outside the barrier range. The planet looked different from when he was a child. The crystal cities no longer glowed with warm light. Instead, they pulsed with cold, blue energy. Military ships patrolled the space around the world, ready to destroy any intruder. "This is defense control," a voice said over the radio. "Human vessel, you are in restricted space. Leave immediately or be destroyed." Activated his transmitter. "My name is Doctor. I request permission to land on." There was a long pause. Then a different voice came on, colder than the first. "Doctor, your species is forbidden here. The barriers will destroy your ship if you approach. This is your only warning." "I need to speak with of the Crystal Gardens," said. "I have something that belongs to her." "No one by that name exists in our records," the voice replied. "All underwent proper identification updates after the severance. Personal names from the contaminated period were eliminated." Felt a chill run down his spine. They had taken away even her name. "Then I need to speak with whoever she became." "Impossible. Break off and leave our space." Knew he couldn't get through the barriers by force. His ship was tough, but not tough enough to survive weapons that could destroy matter itself. He needed a different approach. For 3 days studied the ancient laws that he had memorized years ago. Somewhere in those texts was a solution. There had to be. There were logical beings. If he could find the right legal argument, they would have to listen. Finally, he found it. Hidden in a law book that was thousands of years old, discovered something called the right of heart's truth. It was an ancient tradition from before they became so fearful. According to this law, anyone who could prove that their love transcended species barriers had the right to approach the planet, even during times of isolation. But proving transcendent love required a public testimony. The person had to broadcast their story to the entire planet and let the people judge whether their devotion was real. "This is Doctor calling," he said on all frequencies. "I invoke the ancient right of heart's truth. I request the chance to prove my love transcends species barriers." Silence filled the radio for nearly an hour. Began to think they would ignore him. Then a new voice spoke. This one sounded older and wiser than the others. "Doctor, I am Elder L of the High Council. The right of heart's truth has not been invoked for over 1,000 years. Most of us thought it was forgotten." "The law still exists," said. "I have the right to tell my story. If your story is judged false or incomplete, you will be destroyed immediately," the elder warned. "And even if you succeed, the barriers will only be lowered for 1 hour. After that, they will rise again forever." "I understand," said. "I'm ready." "Very well, you may begin your testimony. The entire planet is listening." Took a deep breath. This was it. Everything he had worked for came down to the next few minutes. He had to make them remember what they used to be. He had to help them feel again. "My name is," he began. 23 years ago, I was 8 years old, playing in the crystal gardens of the Terran embassy. That's where I met my best friend. She had wings made of light and eyes like captured starlight." On surface, stop what they were doing to listen. In the towers of the capital city, beings who hadn't felt emotions for years found themselves remembering something they had lost. Continued his story. He told them about the last day before the severance when had cried diamond tears. He described his promise to marry her when he grew up and how she had laughed and called it impossible. "After I left, I spent 15 years learning everything I could about your people," said. "I became a scientist because I wanted to understand the severance. I wanted to find a way to break it." In the council chambers, they listened with growing amazement. This human had dedicated his entire adult life to understanding their culture. He knew their language better than many of their own children. He had memorized their laws and customs with perfect accuracy. "When I learned that revering the severance required Heartstar metal, I didn't hesitate," continued. "I built a ship and dove into the cores of dying stars 7 times. Each attempt nearly killed me, but I never gave up because I made a promise." They had heard rumors about the human who dove into stars, but they had never connected those stories to their own world. Now they realized that all those impossible acts of courage had been for one of their own people. "I have the ring," said, holding it up so his ship's cameras could show it. "Forged from Heartstar metal just as your laws require. I've kept my promise. I'm ready to marry if she'll have me." Across, something extraordinary happened. Began to remember what they had given up when they chose the severance. In the government towers, counselors found tears on their faces for the first time in decades. In the crystal cities, beings who had forgotten how to feel started to remember love, joy, and wonder. In a small apartment in the capital, a young woman named Coordinator 7491 stopped working at her computer. Something about the human story felt familiar. She couldn't remember why, but her heart started beating faster when he mentioned crystal gardens and starlight eyes. "The testimony is complete," Elder L announced. "The council will vote." But the council didn't need to vote. Across the planet were already making their choice. They remembered what they used to be before fear made them cold. They remembered that love was worth any risk. The quantum barriers around flickered and died. For the first time in 23 years, the planet was open to the stars. "Dr. Elder L said, your testimony has been judged true. You have 1 hour before the barriers return. Use it well." Fired his engines and raced toward. He had found a way past their defenses, but now came the hardest part. He had to find and hope that some part of her remembered him. He had to hope that love really could conquer anything, even the power to rewrite memory itself. As his ship descended through's atmosphere, whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening. Let this work. Let her remember. Let love be stronger than forgetting. Landed his ship in the same crystal gardens where he had played as a child. The fountain still sparkled in the center, but everything else looked different. The crystal trees that used to glow with warm light now pulsed with cold, blue energy. The flowers had lost their colors. Even the air felt empty and sad. "Attention, human," a voice said from hidden speakers. "Report to Processing Station 7 for immediate departure preparation." "I need to find someone first," said to the air. "Her designation is Coordinator 7491. She used to be called." "Coordinator 7491 will be brought to you," the voice replied. "You have 57 minutes remaining." Stood by the fountain and waited. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. In his pocket, the Heartstar ring felt warm against his fingers. 23 years of work had led to this moment. Now he would learn if his impossible dream could come true. Footsteps echoed across the crystal pathways. Turned and saw her walking toward him. Looked almost the same as he remembered, but also completely different. She still had pale skin that seemed to glow from inside. Her hair still moved like it was underwater. Her wings still sparkled with their own light. But her eyes were wrong. Instead of starlight, they looked empty and cold. She walked like a robot with no expression on her face. "I am Coordinator 7491. She said in a flat voice. "I have been assigned to process your departure from. Please state your business." Felt his heart break a little. This wasn't the laughing, playful girl he remembered. The severance had taken away everything that made her who she was. He said softly, "It's me." "My designation is Coordinator 7491, she repeated. "I do not recognize the names you have spoken. Are you experiencing psychological distress? I can recommend treatment facilities." Stepped closer. "Do you remember the Crystal Gardens? We used to play hide and seek here. You always hid behind the blue tree with the singing flowers." His face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes for just a moment. "I have no memories of recreational activities. All past data from the contaminated period has been purged from my consciousness." "What about chocolate?" asked. "I shared my chocolate with you on the first day we met. You said it tasted like happiness." This time the flicker lasted longer, put her hand to her head like it hurt. There are no records of such interactions. You must be mistaken. Reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. The moment it appeared, the entire garden seemed to change. The Heartstar metal glowed brighter than any light on. Warmth spread out from the ring like ripples in a pond. I made you a promise, said. I said I would marry you when I grew up. I said I would find a way to come back for you. Stared at the ring, her empty eyes began to widen. That's impossible. Heartstar metal only exists in the cores of dying stars. No one could. I dove into 7 stellar cores to get this metal, said. I almost died each time, but I kept going because I promised you I would. His breathing became faster. Her hands started to shake. No, the severance is permanent. All emotional connections were severed. I don't. Look at me, said gently. Really look at me. Can't you feel anything? She looked into his eyes, and suddenly her face crumpled. Tears began to fall down her cheeks, but these weren't the diamond tears she used to cry. These were tears of confusion and pain. There's something wrong with me, she whispered. When I look at you, I feel like I'm remembering a dream, but the severance should have taken all of that away. Stepped closer and held out the ring. Touch it, please, just touch it once. Reached out with a trembling hand. The moment her fingers brushed the Heartstar metal, everything changed. Light exploded outward from the ring. Not harmful light, but warm, gentle radiance that washed over both of them. Gasped as 15 years of locked-away memories came flooding back all at once. She remembered playing in the gardens. She remembered sharing his chocolate. She remembered teaching him words in her language that sounded like singing. She remembered the last day before the severance, when she had cried and he had promised to come back for her. She whispered, and now her voice sounded like music again. Is it really you? I told you I'd come back, said, smiling through his own tears. I told you I'd bring a ring. Threw her arms around him and held him tight. Her wings spread wide, glowing brighter than they had in 23 years. I remember everything now. I remember how much I loved you, how much I still love you. Will you marry me? Asked, still holding the ring. Yes, laughed, and her laugh was exactly like he remembered. Yes, you impossible, wonderful man. Of course I'll marry you. Slipped the ring onto her finger. The moment he did, something amazing happened. The light from the ring spread out across the entire planet. Everyone felt it. The cold, logical barriers they had built around their hearts began to crumble. In the government towers, counselors remembered what it felt like to hope. In the crystal cities, families hugged each other for the first time in decades. Children began to laugh and play games they had forgotten. The planet itself seemed to come alive again as its people remembered how to feel. Elder L stood in the council chamber, watching the readings on his instruments. Impossible, he said. The Heartstar metal isn't just affecting one individual. It's resonating across the entire planet's psychic field. What does that mean? Asked another counselor. It means the severance is breaking everywhere, L said with wonder in his voice. One ring is undoing 23 years of imposed isolation. And stood in the garden, holding each other and watching their world come back to life. Around them, the crystal trees began to glow with warm colors again. The flowers opened and started to sing. Even the fountain sparkled brighter. How did you do it? Asked. How did you actually keep your promise? Everyone said it was impossible. Humans don't know the meaning of impossible, said. When we love someone, we'll reshape the universe to be with them. 3 days later, and were married in the Crystal Gardens. It was the first wedding in 23 years. Beings came from across the galaxy to witness the ceremony. The warriors who had helped were there. The engineers brought gifts. Even some of the council members who had originally called him crazy came to offer their congratulations. Today we witness something extraordinary, Elder L said as he performed the ceremony. 2 beings from different species, united by a love that conquered time, space, and the barriers we build around our hearts. When and kissed, their combined light lit up the entire garden. Children from both species laughed and played together in the crystal pathways. It was a sight that hadn't been seen since before the severance. News of the wedding spread across the galaxy. The story of the human who dove into stars for love became legend. Other species began to remember that emotional connections weren't weaknesses to be feared. They were strengths that could overcome any obstacle. The phrase human promise entered the galactic language. When someone said they made a human promise, everyone knew it meant something that could never be broken. Humans will move mountains, dive into stars, and break the laws of physics before they'll break a promise to someone they love. And became ambassadors for a new age of cooperation between species. They traveled the galaxy together, teaching others that love knows no boundaries. Their wedding ring, forged from the heart of a dying star, became a symbol of hope for anyone who thought their dreams were impossible. Years later, they would return to the Crystal Gardens with their children. Half human, half kids who could fly on wings of light and understood both the wonder of emotion and the beauty of logic. These children played the same games their parents had once played, making their own impossible promises under alien stars. "Tell us the story again," the children would beg, and would smile and begin. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who made a promise to a girl with starlight eyes. Everyone said it was impossible to keep, but the boy didn't care. He knew that humans don't break promises. We break physics instead. In the end, had done more than just keep a childhood promise. He had reminded the galaxy that love is the most powerful force in the universe. When someone truly loves another, there is no distance too great, no barrier too strong, and no dream too impossible to achieve. The boy had promised to come back with a ring, and 23 years later, he had done exactly that.